Hello everybody. How are you doing? Hope you're doing well. We've got a greyish day today, but sometimes it's sunny, sometimes it's not. It's just one of those days. Yeah. So there you go. I hope it's well where you are. I hope you are well. I hope that the day, the week, the whatever it is going well for you. And I've just realised I have the wrong background behind me. So if you wait a moment, I shall change that to something different. Hi Jonathan, great to have you here. Oh, lovely, bright and sunny here in Christchurch. I am so glad to hear that because, yeah, did you have that cold that we had yesterday and the day before? Was it as cold down in Christchurch? It was probably a lot colder in Christchurch. It's a bit of a silly question, isn't it? But yeah, I was just wondering if you've actually had the cold that we've got. Hang on. And yes, I did obviously remember to turn on chat, and I am so sorry for forgetting that last time. Yeah, I'm not sure. I need to actually write a list so that I can remember all the different things I have to do. So currently I have remembered to make sure my mic is not muted. And I also know that you, Jonathan, would tell me if it was, if I had remembered to turn the chat on, which I have. I have got an eye on my Discord server this time to check to see if anybody's telling me all about it, like they did last week, and I totally did not see it, which was a bit anyway. But just I can. So my Discord server is actually in my browser on the other screen. And go back to that view, so that's good. Yes, chat has my back. It's wonderful, especially when I remember to turn it on. So we're getting there. We're getting there. Now there was a picture I was going to show you. What was? Right. I found out where it was. See if I can actually find the right one, because one of the things there are two things that I want to tell you about. One of which I haven't figured out how to do yet, and the second of which I already have figured out how to do, but it's more a matter of when. So that particular image source I'm not going to use. I'm going to use a different one, and I'm probably about to overload my system because it's probably going to be a larger image than I would normally use, just because I really like these images and I was wanting to use them because of what's coming up. So for those of you outside of New Zealand, we have a new public holiday not tomorrow, the day after, tomorrow's tomorrow, on Friday. It's called Matariki, which means, the collection of meaning is the Maori New Year. And I apologise ahead of time. My pronunciation is terrible when it comes to Maori names and words and language like that, because I don't know if you've noticed it, this grey hair I've got, that's an indication that I'm in my 50s. Actually, I'm in my late 50s. And when we were at school, the sum total of our learning any Maori at all was we basically learnt some introductory counting, tahi rua toru wha. I can't remember the rest because they don't get used as much, but tahi rua toru wha was reinforced because it was used as the count-in on some songs. It's like 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you launch into the songs. And apart from that, we have place names, and I'm just trying to see if I can open this other than in my browser to see if it's the picture I want to use as my background. So tahi rua toru wha, and then we had a few words, and we used to listen to, this is back in the days before digital anything. Sorry, my eyes are itchy. And I'm thinking, and I've realised I have a tendency to do this if I don't have to be doing something with my hands and I'm needing to think. Sometimes I take my glasses off and rub my eyes. Maybe it helps me to think better. It's an unusual thing, but hey, whatever. I think I found the image I want, but I'm not sure. So what I was going to say was I have some images here to do with Matariki, which are taken by a chap I know who lives in the South Island. He is the director of the Dunedin Museum, and he is also an astronomer. I nearly said astrologer. That would get me in big trouble. He's an astronomer, and he does things like he organised, oh, that is way too big. I love the colour, but that's way too big. I'm just going to resize it for you. Organised something called the Flight of the Lights. Now, yes, he loves stars. He's discovered various and named various ones as an astronomer. I mean, technically he works as an amateur astronomer because he has a job being the director of the Dunedin Museum. I'm just trying to see which bit of the picture I'm happy to miss out on. Let's do it like that. Much as I like that hill and the contrast it gives me, I also like the colours over in this corner. This is a photograph that he took at near where he lives, down just out of Dunedin. So this is Ian Griffin. If you're looking him up online, look for him on Twitter, Ian Griffin, Griffin. And he's... Hi, Arinelle, good to have you here. Yes, absolutely beautiful. This is one of the photos he's taken near where he lives. Now, that colour in the sky there is not edited. That's the colour it was when he took the photo, because at the moment in the New Zealand nights, early morning, late evening sky, we have volcanic, they're not particulates, aerosolates, I think they called them. Anyway, basically stuff from the volcano erupting in Tonga in January. And I actually had the name of it handy and I can't remember what it's called. Anyway, so they had an eruption between two islands in Tonga at this place, which is a third kind of an island. It's actually two sort of shells of two edges of islands, and then there's a volcano erupted between them, and it threw up a lot of ash and smoke and a whole lot of other things, sort of people made homeless, all sorts of stuff like that. And we are now seeing the colour from that in our early morning and late evening skies. So that's why at the moment in New Zealand our sunsets are more yellowy orange than they usually are, because of these particulates in the sky at whatever strata of the atmosphere. And so Ian was explaining on Twitter that the colours that you see here are because of the orangey yellow that is dominant at the moment in the late afternoon, early evening, combined with the blues you get in the sky as the brightness of the sun goes away and when it's gone down, and you get those nice early night blues coming into the sky, and the combination of the two gives you this gorgeous purpley pinkish color. Some of his other ones are more pink than this, just whatever, but he doesn't take photos and then do color manipulation on them. This is actually the way he would have seen it. And yes, absolutely stunning. And the reason I was looking for that was because I have some great news. So the first bit of news is I'll tell you the great news. The great news is, no, first of all, how many festivals can we do? Because we're already well into this, aren't we? Right, so I have two books here. Don't they look wonderful? Don't they look wonderful? So this one here is the book we're going to be reading today. It's called Dreamy Girl's Garden, and I have told you before that I actually, where I can, will read from physical, actual books where I have to turn the page, just because they have a lovely old book smell and feel to them, and the texture of the cloth on the cover and all this sort of stuff, and the faded print the faded pictures in them. And sometimes if they're old enough, you can actually feel the indentations from the letterpress when they were printing the letters on the page, right? So these are the two books I'm currently waving around. That's Dream Girl's Garden. That's today's story. We will be starting that. And the other book is this one, which I have waved at you before when I received it as a gift from Vodafone New Zealand, because I am a business customer of theirs. I'm a very small business customer, but instead of being on a prepay plan, I am on a postpaid plan, which means I'm on account. They send me an invoice once a month and my bank pays it. It's done as a direct debit. And so because of that, they sent me a Matariki thank you gift, which included, this is the card that came with it. So ngā mihi, ngā mihi actually means thank you, I think. That's the Vodafone logo up here. This is representing the stars of Matariki. So it says, thank you for being a great customer. This month is Matariki and we wanted to celebrate by sending you a gift. We've got some Te Ani Kawakawa tea, Matariki Keep Cup. That's this one here with the Matariki stars on it. And it's got, there is Hei Kaputi, which is, Maori does have some loan words in it. So kaputi is cup of tea. So this is your keep cup. That's the loan word used for keep cup. But with Maori spelling and pronunciation applied to it. Matariki Keep Cup, tea and tea strainer. It's a tea ball that I've got downstairs in the tea making drawer, and the tea is in the pantry next to it. To keep you warm as you watch the stars, bedtime reading is sorted with 7 kites of Matariki, accompanied by some delicious cocoa chocolate. Cocoa, spelt the Maori way, that's the brand name for that company. Aotearoa inspired. And what else does it say about the chocolate? Doesn't. On the packet it says kawakawa, same thing, it's a New Zealand native plant. Kawakawa and matcha, which is the Japanese green tea. White compound chocolate. Matcha's not my favourite flavour, so I think I might be passing that one on to my daughter because she likes it. So for once, I'm not actually using the iPad mini for reading from. So this book here, this is the good news, the exciting news, is I have been in touch with Scholastic. They actually may try phoning me today while I'm reading, in which case I may have to step away from the camera and put you on pause. Well, not pause, put you on the be right back soon screen and you can fiddle around, do whatever. And if that's the case, I will be taking a phone call from Scholastic with some additional details. So I phoned them today to ask if I could read this for you guys on Twitch. Keep in mind that all the books I read usually are public domain books. They are no longer within copyright. This one is still within copyright because it was published in 2016, I think. I'll just check. Yes, 2016, and it's written by Calico McClintock and it's illustrated by Dominique Ford, and it's got these beautiful illustrations in it and a lovely story. So I asked them if I could read it live on Twitch, and because of the fact that Matariki is Friday, I have the book. I would like to read it on Friday as part of Matariki, and I have so many people all around the world who listen to the stories, and so it would be a great way to share something that is very specifically New Zealand. And I also asked my friend Ian if I could use some of his photographs as props, basically, in background and things like that for while I'm reading for today, and he said, sure, go ahead. So that's wonderful. So that was really exciting news for me. They will be phoning back to give me some information about whether or not I'm going to be allowed to actually then transfer the recordings over to YouTube. The unofficial word is so far I can, but they will be accessible by link only, in which case go to my Discord server if you haven't already and make sure you have joined it. And then once it goes onto YouTube, I will put the link for Friday's reading up on YouTube, up on the Discord server, so you can access it, because it won't be available publicly unless they say I'm allowed to. So I already have the verbal permission that I can read the book on stream. Yay! That's so exciting. I didn't know if I was ever going to be able to do that, but you never know what's going to happen when you pluck up the courage and phone someone, and they said yes, probably because the context of Matariki, the season, the fact that I had been given the book and that sort of stuff, and I sort of played it on the fact that it's, you know, an international viewership, which it is. We have Kiwis here, such as Jonathan and myself, and we also have people from overseas here. I'm pretty sure that Aranel is not in New Zealand. Would that be right? Anyway, so that was one bit of news. The other bit of news, which is nowhere near as exciting, is that I'm really, really, really hoping to be able to get it set up so I can put a little wee jigsaw puzzle game available so that you and whoever else is in chat can play the jigsaw puzzles while I'm reading, if you need something to do to keep your eyes and your hands occupied while I'm reading. And I'll probably put it up where it says story time, just outside the frame on, Kansas City and Missouri. Great, thank you, Aranel. I'll probably put it up in the top left-hand corner of the overlay, just so that it's not in the way of the video when I go and trim it and put it over onto YouTube. That sort of stuff. And I kind of tried a test run earlier on, but I could see where it was, but it didn't look like the way I had chosen it to be. And when I moved pieces around, because you're meant to be able to have the jigsaw puzzle open in your browser and then have it show up in the overlay of the stream as a live thing when it's happening. I don't know if it's because I wasn't live, but most other things when I'm using them on OBS, if I'm moving it around, the source of it, then it shows up in real time, relatively real time, on the overlay. So we will see what happens. Hopefully I can get that going so that you don't have to just sit there and twiddle your thumbs. So I am going to introduce myself for those people who are new here. Hi, I'm Jev. I read old children's books, such as this one. This is one that's been in my family for a very long time, and it's one that was published in 1923 or 1926. I can't remember which of the two. I wrote it down somewhere several times today, but I don't remember. And I can't tell you because it's missing a few pages at the beginning of the book, the title page and the subtitle page, or half title page. And if it was young enough to have copyright details, they would be on the back of the title page. It doesn't. Somebody has, I don't think they've deliberately torn it out. I think it's just fallen apart and pages have fallen out. Now, it has my grandmother's maiden name written inside it, so it has been her book, and it is written with, a very, very fine fountain pen, and it does have a few pictures in it. You can, the rattling you were hearing just a minute ago is just the scratching of pieces, because as you can see, the cover's coming apart. So it's got some illustrations in it, and I have scans of those, and I've sharpened them up a little bit, so you'll be able to see them when I get to that part of the story, hopefully. At least this time when I'm reading, I actually have them in the book that I'm reading from, the pictures that I'm meant to be showing you. I should queue up the first one though, shouldn't I? That would be useful. Right. Edith Howe's Dream Girl's Garden, which is the name of the book we're going to be reading, and I still didn't actually tell you the stuff I was going to tell you as part of my intro for new people. So I'll do that just a moment. Put that in the right place, and then I can do that. Hi, I'm Jev. I read old children's books, such as the one I just waved around at you and then nattered on for too long. Anyway, I have some tips. This is ridiculous. Maybe I'm getting distracted by this gorgeous picture behind me. I don't know what it is. I'm just having a... Maybe it's because I haven't got my hair down. Usually people sort of get all wafty and off in different directions when they do let their hair down, and I haven't this time. So I don't know, maybe I should always have my hair down. Right, so I have 3 tips if you're new here. that I just like to give you, because it does actually mean story time is a bit easier to stick with. Enjoy it, a bit easier it's more enjoyable. First one is make sure you have something to drink handy. So I usually wave this at you guys. This is my water bottle. And I wave it at you because it's got a reasonably watertight lid, and so I'm not going to get water everywhere and kill my computer when I'm in the middle of streaming. I usually actually drink from this for water when I'm on stream, just because it's less likely to fall over. It's not just skinny. I also have an actual luxury drink, which is my coffee today in my Matariki cup. So that's point one, is drinks. Second point is snacks. So yeah, we've got cheese and crackers today, and we're nearly getting the whole green screen thing happening with the yellow cheese, even though my green screen is tuned for a very bright, almost fluorescent green thing behind me. Actually, let's just see if I can find that. Filters. I'm just going to show you what it looks like. It is so green, seriously. Now, keep in mind that I don't have a light shining on it directly at the moment. That it's just ambient light. That's my green screen. Pretty bright. Anyway, it's actually just a big piece of felt that I got from a fabric store here in New Zealand, and it wasn't particularly wide, so I got a long enough piece that it goes over a bar from a broken one of those clothes racks, and then is flipped back over the bar again from the other side. So you've got basically two squares hanging alongside each other and just overlapping, which you can't see the line of the overlap because it is so green that's where the overlap is. It's so, and there's some other green fabric of a different sort underneath. So that's my hand is in the overlap. It's so green that you can't actually see the little shadow of the line between the two pieces. It's not even fancy stuck together or anything. And the reason why I tell you all that sort of ridiculous stuff is because people think they have to have super expensive gear to be able to do streaming. If you're going to be streaming with a very computer processing intense game, and you don't want it to be stuttering, then yeah, you might want a fairly high-level computer that can cope with all that. But for just doing something like chatting or reading or whatever, you don't need lots of fancy stuff. When I first started streaming, I just used my phone against whatever background I found in the house, and every story I read, because it was a whole lot of little stories, every story I read from a different part of my home, just to give it a bit of different variety to the flavour. Not fabulous sound quality, but it was okay, and I just streamed straight from my phone via the Twitch app to Twitch. And I saved all those, and all those videos are available still on YouTube. Yeah, not wide enough backgrounds are the bane of your existence, says Jonathan. Fabric stores never have rolls wide enough for portrait. Yeah, it depends on what you're doing. If you're using it for green screen, and it's something like the stuff that I'm using, I mean, literally, it is super bright, way brighter than that looks in the camera. But somehow or other, because I'm not sure if it's because of the texture, because it's felt. You don't actually see the seam line in it. Occasionally, when I'm getting ready to stream, I will be leaning over here and pulling a corner down because it's picked up and you can see the stuff under it like that. That's the effect. That's how simple it is. It's just actually this piece of fabric which I'm holding up between my fingers at the moment. And you can see all my junk behind it. Because my office is in the junk storage space upstairs. So yeah, but it's literally, I have a bar that has the one end of the fabric that comes up and over, and then I've flipped it across and then flipped it again so that it comes across, and then the other half of it to the end hanging down, and the two pieces are literally overlapped like that. They're not fastened together, and like I say, it's just the bar, the support bar, and two support bars and another bar with the little bits that hold them together from an old broken one of those clothing racks that you get from the warehouse, except the top bar is actually a rejected curtain rail because the other one wasn't quite wide enough. That's all it is. And it is literally that far away from me, just arm's length behind my chair. My lights, they're bedside lamps that have, I've got an odd bulb in them, in one of them. I'll show you actually. The reason I tell you all this is because I'd like people to realise that being able to do this sort of stuff is way more doable than they think. Yeah, see that's that. Yeah, it's got a sticker on it. So that's my lamp. It's just a bedside lamp with a push button on it. And then this is a Philip. I'm trying to get it so my other light shines on it so you can see what it is. This is a Philips UFO bulb. So that the bottom of it is a big disc. And then it's got this, I'll turn that off. There you go, now it's just got light shining on. It's just a frosted plastic cap that goes over it, and it's LEDs. And it just goes into a normal light fitting. So it was about $20, I think, through Mitre 10 or Corey's Electrical or somewhere like that. So yeah, a little bit much to what I would normally pay for a light bulb, but for this use, it's brilliant. And the bonus I have here is that my ceiling is literally right there, and it's painted white. And so that, instead of shining directly at me, which I would find just a little bit too bright, as you saw, it actually shines up on that lampstand onto the ceiling and then reflects back off the ceiling. So it softens it so you don't get harsh shadows around the edge because the light is coming from a wider area. And then on top of that, I have just a little wee, you know, those foldy desk lamps, like the ones in the Pixar intros that go boing, boing, boing along with the little lamp, equipoise lamp or angle poise lamp. Hi Q, good to have you here too. And I'll explain about codecs shortly. I'm just doing my blether about lights. I'll be back. I used to have this one. This is a $10 bedside lamp from the warehouse, which is our cheap bits and pieces department store that a lot of places have in New Zealand. Just, you know, I haven't got it plugged in at the moment. But the only difference with this, I used to use this one, I now use the angle poise one, which is another cheap one from the warehouse. The only difference is I'm using a Philips stick bulb. So that's the frosted plastic again, and it's LED on the inside. And if you're going to do that, choose colour-wise to use a cool lamp, because you can adjust colour up into the orange up thermally wise, not lighting numbers wise. You can adjust your colour on your stream better into those colours, into warmer colours, than you can remove the warmer colours if it's too warm from your lamps. So there you go. And those lamps, the bulbs, the stick bulbs, those funny cylindrical ones, they're made by Philips. Normally I just get cheapy LED lamps from bulbs from along at the warehouse, but those ones were worth it. That one I think was about $8 at the supermarket. And I just got the brightest one I could get. Actually, I think no, that one's not the brightest one I could get, the one that's up here, because it was too bright. The one that I just showed you before is actually a warm one, which I use for taking photographs of products for our home-based business, because they're wood products, and so the warmer colouring of the bulb works really well for that. So yeah, it's all doable with really basic stuff. I now have a wonderful streaming camera. It's a $300 Logitech stream cam, which was a gift from my son because he won it when another friend of ours was streaming and Logitech was sponsoring the stream, and my son happened to win it. and he'd said in the stream actually that he was going to give it to me because he doesn't do any streaming, and so he passed it on to me. So it's wonderful, yes, but I wouldn't have paid $300 for a camera. The real advantage at the moment of it is that I can get it to usually focus. There you go, so it's kind of focused on my hand, and then it will autofocus back onto my face. That is the main advantage, because otherwise before that I had a Logitech C270 as a stream cam after having used my phone. And that was a lovely gift also from my son. He bought that one for me, which a lot of overseas streamers, the high-level streamers, will say, super cheap, because they're sort of like $30 wherever they live. Well, they're not in New Zealand. They're about $90. So, yeah. And they're still about $70 to $90 in New Zealand, even though they've been around for a very long time. They are very reliable, though. But you do need to use the Logitech webcam software just to make sure it stabilizes the light settings for it before you then input that into your OBS or whatever you're using, which is way too technical, and you don't need all that because you only came here to listen to stories, didn't you? I know, I'm sorry. I got distracted, didn't I? Do you like the picture I managed to get of the photo of the picture of the cover of the book? That's our current book, which is why it shows a piece of sellotape on the cover, old sellotape on the cover. That's the stuff here. That brown there is because it's someone put a piece of sellotape on the cover and didn't take it off in time, and so therefore it wrecked the paper underneath, and then later on somebody tried to take it off and it peeled off part of the picture, and so the tape, the now unsticky tape, was taped back on with two pieces of invisible tape, which so far haven't gone too brittle and fallen off. Otherwise there'd be a hole in the picture. Anyway, jigsaw puzzle, talked about that. Chat is working, yay. Microphone is working, camera is working. Talked about the new book that I'm going to be reading on Friday, which is a one-day only book that I'm reading just because it's a kid's picture book. It's not a long chapter book or anything like that. If you've arrived a little bit after I got started, this is the book I'll be reading on Friday. It is copyright. It is still within copyright, but I have permission from the publishers to read it on Twitch. Yay! And hopefully they're not going to ring me while I'm in the middle of streaming. I'm so glad that you actually followed up on that information about the bot checker. It is very useful. I actually now have it because I work on my computer a lot with what I'm doing for home. So I actually have my monitor here that I'm talking to you on. My camera's on top of it. And then over on my right-hand side, which is why you see me looking sideways so often, is my second monitor. And on that, when I go to stream, I have a folder in my browser that I open all the tabs, and I just right-click on the folder and tell it to open all the tabs. And the tabs I have, just for those of you who are streamers, because this is useful information, is Twitch Tools by Commander Root, which I don't usually use while I'm actually streaming, but it's handy to have it there, you know. Bit of a security blanket. I have my mod view of my stream because that's where I control the subscribers only chat and the emotes chat. You know about them, remember? Those are there. But also I can see who's in chat as part of the mod tool. So it's you go to your normal channel view, and then you go channel view of your chat section. I'll explain that again. You go to your channel on Twitch in your browser. This is obviously talking about doing this on a computer, not on a phone. Go to your channel on Twitch. Go to your chat button that's over on the right-hand side, and that will come up with where your video is going to show when you're actually streaming. And then down on the bottom below where it's got the chat panel, if you haven't closed it by hitting the arrow to the right. So if you have, then you hit that right-hand arrow that's up near the top to pop it back out again. And at the bottom of that section there where the chat is, there is a thing that looks like a cartoon sword. If you click on that, that opens up mod view, which if you've not done moderating for other people, it's very, very useful. But in there, I mean, you can see these bits of information sort of anyway, But in there, it's got a channel tool that's called Users in Chat, and it's got a refresh button there, so you can just refresh it every now and then. So I can see technically who is in my chat, even if they're not actually watching the video. I don't know quite how that happens, but it's just one of those things that Twitch can do, and they count numbers differently. Strange. Twitch has some strange systems. But also, if you're just looking at it normally, even when you're watching somebody else's channel, if you were looking at it with the chat panel open on the right hand side of your screen, there's a button up near the top that it just looks like an icon, but it's actually a button. So it'll have stream chat, and then at the right hand of that bar, it's got an icon that looks like a silhouette of two people. One is usually dark and one is usually light, and they're two different sizes. If you click on, that's the community button. If you click on that, it'll give you something similar to the users in chat panel. Now, what you will see in there is the broadcaster. That's whoever's streaming. In my case, it's me with my screen name. It'll have who the moderators are that are currently on your channel. So at the moment, my moderators are Stream Elements and Nightbot, because I have those bots available to do certain things for moderating. They have moderator privileges. And then users, and I'm not going to read those out, because unless somebody has said hi, I try not to call them out. I did actually the other day. I called out a friend of mine and then realized I'd called them out, not in a negative way, but just said hi to them because I could see them in my users in chat, even though they hadn't said anything. They were okay with it, thankfully. Anyway, the power had gone to my head. So when you're there, you can actually see who is technically in chat. And the reason why that's important is if you've got bots, and I know some of you have heard this before, but I'm going to put it out there because there will be people who watch this later on who may need to know. And you need to know this if you're a streamer. You need to look after the health of the community on your streams. And yes, if you've got moderators and they are good moderators, they will do those jobs too. But it is ultimately your responsibility, and whether or not Twitch takes away your rights to stream can depend on the health of your community on your streams. Meaning, if there are a whole bunch of inappropriate bots, not moderator bots and not tools bots like Twitch tools, Commander Root has a bot, and also Siri has a bot. And those are useful tools, and they have been authorized by Twitch to be used in people's streams. But there are a whole bunch of bots whose sole purpose is either to harvest your users, your viewers' information for future sale or hacking purposes or whatever they feel like. I don't know what they do, and I don't want to know. Or to take benefits that are being handed out, such as gifted subs. You want someone, if you are buying subs and you're gifting them to people in chat, you want to know that they're going to actual people, not to something that is just someone's bot program. Because the real people are then missing out if the bot has received them. So yeah, go ahead, keep an eye on, when you're streaming, keep an eye on that chat users. And then if you're not sure, use the link which I shared last time, which I will give you guys again. I know that everyone who's here at the moment has seen all this before, and I'm restating it, but it really is useful information. And the better we come to terms with it being automatic that we do these things, the healthier it is for our communities. And you won't have people like me talking about it for hours and hours instead of reading their book, which they're meant to be doing. So yeah, if you use the Twitch Insights bot link, which I just gave you there, if you put a name in there that you have copied from your users in chat, don't go to their page, because some of them have scripts running which harvest your information. Don't give them your information. So copy their username from your users in chat panel, paste it into the search box on that link I gave you. If it shows up with anything more than 24 channels that it's in, that's 24 channels that it's in, they are very definitely a bot. They are not there for positive vibes and good purposes. You will find that Commander Root and Siri can show up there, but they are actually not ones that are going to steal information, and they're not ones that are going to steal people's subs. So they are safe, but any of the others ban, and just ban them by typing it in. Don't right click on them, don't click on them and then click the button to ban them, because there are some of the scripts that people are now running actually will use that. They have a way of grabbing information from clicks on their links, even their name links. If you select and copy, that's different to if you actually click on the link. And I'm serious. This is actually happening, and it's been happening for quite a long time now. So if you want to ban them and you don't want to use the click on the link button to do it, then what you do is you type / for your direction, / and then ban, BAN, space, and then paste in that username that you've just copied, hit the enter button. You type that into your chat in OBS, in Twitch, wherever it is that you're accessing it, and then it will show you in chat for you, because you're the streamer, that they have been banned. And then if you're really worried about it, you can also block them, which means that they can't send you messages. I haven't had anyone sending me inappropriate messages on Twitch so far, which is great. But sometimes you just get this niggling feeling that maybe you need to go a little bit further than just banning someone so that they can't interact in chat. So that's what you do, is you block them. Simple. That's my lecture for this morning. Actually, no, it's this afternoon. Positive stuff. Codex. I've got some great Codex members here. Codex people are people who are part of a special group of readers on Twitch, and we read public domain books. We read public domain books because we are not violating anyone's copyright. There are some books that are being read that are not public domain, but we have express permission to be able to read those. We are not stealing the use of someone else's intellectual property. And a bunch of the people who are current in my chat at the moment are actually Codex members, so I'm going to give you a shout out for them. I should have actually copied it, shouldn't I? I think I got it. Yes, it looks like I did. And so Aranel is one of them. And I'm trying to think of anything else. So Jonathan is not actually a member of Codex, but Jonathan is reading something that is public domain, letters and other bits of information. You're most welcome, Aranel. Other bits of information from various books and stuff to do with the events that were going on during the reign of Queen Elizabeth I. I think I got this right. I try to remember every time and get it right. Aranel reads a variety of books. Some of them are manga, I think. I don't know, because I don't read anything other than old children's books to know what things are called anymore. But Jonathan's in the middle of working up a game. I think it's essentially based on the events, and so he's reading online, is reading these documents to fill himself with the information, but to share it as well, and going to use those as the basis for this game that's actually set in that time period. I'm trying to think of if there's anyone else. So hi Aunt, hi Q, hi Aranel, hi Jonathan. These are all people who have actually said something in chat, so I feel free to actually be able to say hi out loud to you. It's wonderful to have you all here, and no, nobody has missed anything yet that's actually story based. We're going to get on with those now. So Codex, the last little bit about Codex for this part of the session is join the Discord server. trying to remember what to type. Sorry. Join the Codex Discord server if you want to find out more about it and actually meet the different people who are part of Codex. We've got a book club. We read a book. Somebody will have chosen one. Oh, visual novels. Sorry, visual novels. That's what they are. And Mansfield Park. Wonderful. Yes, I did see that you've been reading something that was a Jane Austen recently. That's fabulous. Play visual novel apps, and she reads them aloud too. If they're ones where it's got written text about it, she will read the dialogue and stuff like that. All very gentle from what I've seen, which is great. It's quite common amongst the Codex readers to read stuff that isn't really sort of smash bang, wow, pow type stuff. But some of us play games as well. Not me so far. But some play games online. Some play games like me, not online. But the thing that unites us is we read public domain books. Book club. So someone will choose a book. People in the book club will read it. And then there'll be an online discussion, say, at the end of the month. And certain ones of the readers will actually read out a section of it, and then there'll be a discussion about it. All lots of fun. I've kind of caught the tail end of one of the sessions. It'll be streamed on several different people's accounts at the same time. And if you actually want to go and see who's in Codex and get to know us, we've got an intro channel where generally people can write an intro, but also there's a reader's intro channel, which I haven't done anything in, but some of us have. And I also have links on my About Me page for the Twitch channels for all of our current Codex readers. So if you want to follow up on them, and please follow them on Twitch. And their other social media outlets as well. It's a great way to actually get to know other people. So there you go. That's all of the blether. And man, that was long. Sorry, I covered so many things. I had some things that I was excited about, and I had some technical things I wanted to share because I thought they might be useful for you. And no, you don't need a big expensive webcam. You can even just use an old phone. There are apps that you can put on your phone to use your phone as a webcam, especially if you're gaming or you've got something where you're showing most of your screen as something else, not you. The quality of the camera that you use really, really doesn't matter. If you are gaming and you've got this whole overlay here as your game, and then your face is just this tiny little box over here, why would you need thousands and thousands of dollars worth of camera to show at something that's only this big? Because you're not going to get the quality that people think that they want for that. They get so caught up in the technical side of it that they forget that they just need to get on with doing it, which I haven't done yet. Right, mouthful of coffee, and then we'll get on with it. Right. And I've got a whole bunch of other links, which I'll give you later on if I think of it. Most of my commands, you guys in chat are most welcome to use if you want to. I don't have a problem with most of them being available. Not many of my commands are mod-only commands. So here we go. Dream Girl's Garden was written by Edith Howes, and she was actually born in England, London, England, in 1872. I've talked about her before because I have read one of her other books before, but it wasn't my favourite book. The family immigrated to New Zealand when she was a child. She was educated over here, and she actually became a pupil teacher. So she had been a pupil there and then became a teacher there. Not too uncommon in the old days. She was a teacher until 1919 is when she retired, and from then she started. Before then she was actually writing children's books, and the idea was that she thought that children should be able to learn from things around them as much as possible, rather than sitting still and not speaking until one is spoken to, and then getting rapped over the knuckles because one did something wrong or spelled the word incorrectly, and you've got to rap over the knuckles every time you spelled it incorrectly, which I don't think actually really helps you to learn it, makes you scared of learning. And she believed that children needed to actually be able to learn from stuff that was around them. She was a big proponent of Montessori teaching methods, which is children actually using things hands-on, real things hands-on to learn from. And it comes through in the books that she's written because she explains, not all of them, but a lot of her books will explain something to do with the scientific natural world, but using children's story language, fairies and things like that. And so, yeah, she was quite a revolutionary in her day. Yeah, no, I don't need to read you anything more there. There's just so much information about her. I will get on with reading the book. Hi, I'm Jev. We're reading The Dream Girl's Garden by Edith Howes, and this is the first reading we've done from this book. So I'm starting with chapter 1, which doesn't actually have numbers, but that's okay. And this chapter is called The Dream Girl's Garden. So if you're wondering why the book is called that, maybe we'll find out. Her real name is Margaret, but her father and mother call her the Dream Girl because she seems to live in some happy world of her own where all things are true that to older people are but dreams and fancies. Her playthings come alive to her and talk, and all the world lies bright with magic to her eyes. They call the garden hers because from the very first she took every nook and corner for her own, loving all the flowers and giving them quaint names, and because she brought the fairies there. Sorry, it's just got some muslin has glued onto the page, and it's just covering part of the letters, so I couldn't read it quite properly. And because she brought the fairies there. Until she came, the garden was but an ordinary garden where no one walked but ordinary people. When she carried her playthings out and talked to them, the first fairy floated in to listen. When she knelt in ecstasy before a purple pansy, stroking its velvet face and whispering sweet names to it, the second came. And when she lay and dreamed among the grass, gazing with rapt blue eyes into the blue sky till all the air grew warm and radiant with her thoughts, the whole merry troop of fairies came flying in over the barberry hedge, and they have lived there ever since. Now, barberry is not a plant I'm familiar with. Does anybody want to look that one up for us? They are all child fairies, and they play and sing and romp and dream and are good or naughty just like Margaret herself. She knows them all and will sometimes talk to you about them. No one else can see them, though sometimes her mother, waking in the floating dimness of the dawn before the bustling day comes in, catches a glimpse of their flying jewelled wings. For a moment she too enters the fairy garden, but only for a moment. Then the lovely dream gates are swiftly shut, for the bustling day has come. No worries, Jonathan. So glad you can be here anyway. So Jonathan's just said back, sorry, customer came in. Gosh, thanks ever so much for the shout out. No worries. Really love being able to share when people are doing stuff. Yes, Aranel, yes, that does sound amazing. Are you on the Discord? I'd love to know more. Yes, Aranel is not on my Discord. Don't think she is, but she's on the Codex Discord, which I've given you a link for in chat. So go to join the Codex Discord. You can get to know some of the other readers as well there. It's a fairly quiet server, nowhere as quiet as my one. Barberries are a bush in the buttercup family. Ooh, intriguing. Oh, you did. Good. Sorry, I totally forgot. Yes. I'd forgotten that. I'm sorry. Yes, I remember now. So much going on in my head. I've also been doing things like taking photographs of urns for our website and putting them online and putting descriptions online, and then having a great big long hours-long typed chat conversation with a couple of representatives from Shopify because I was trying to sort out some problems on our shop. Not problems that customers can see, but problems that are functions that we don't have access to that we should have access to, and I was trying to find out how to do them. And I actually found out that there was an issue that they didn't realise was there. So anyway, got it sorted. Right. Oh, that's lovely. Thank you, Aranel. Thank you for joining it. Right, here we go. Where did I get to? Oh, yes, the bustling day has come, and then so suddenly she's back in the real world. And thank you for the information about Barbary. That's great. Actually, more accurately, in the Buttercup Order, and they're their own family. Oh, Jonathan has a botany degree. But all I did was Google. Yeah, well, that's what most of us do now, and that's why a lot of people aren't ending up going to university anymore. It's just like, okay, but if it's just finding out about stuff that I can look up online, why am I actually spending thousands and tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of dollars? But no, actually, degrees are really good if it's something where you've had a chance to grow really strongly in yourself, discover yourself, or if it's actually something where you're adding to your understanding or reinforcing your understanding, and you can take that with you forward into life, whether it's for a job or whether it's for something that you really want to do. That's great. But as a thing that just everybody ought to do, not so much. Anyway, right, carrying on. So, Mother occasionally catches glimpses but doesn't really reside in that place. The baby fairies and the fairykins, who are the next to babies, do not live in the Dream Girl's garden. They live in a hidden garden far across the land where it is always spring. There they roll and gurgle among the primroses and violets, and the gentlest one, written with a capital, written capitalized, who is grown up and very wise, takes care of them and teaches them. Other grown-up fairies help her, for of course there are many babies, and sometimes these grown-up fairies bring the babies and the fairykins to the Dream Girl's garden, to be loved and petted by the older ones. That always happens when a new baby is found, and that always happens when a perfect flower blooms in some dream child's garden. Oh, that sounds lovely. The grown-up fairies fly at once to the flower and open its scented petals, for they know that in its satin heart there will lie a fairy baby. They carry the darling to the gentlest one, and then they all fly off to the Dream Girl's garden to tell the child fairies the joyful news, and to make holiday because they are so happy. The child fairies rush to meet them, and when they have kissed the new baby and all the old ones about a dozen times each, they lead their visitors into their prettiest bowers and their very best playing places, and there they are merry and kind the whole day long. Sometimes the child fairies themselves go visiting. They have many friends across the land. There are the woodlings who live in the forest, the white gnomes of the mountain caves, the golden dwarves of the hills, and many another joyous band who live in the magic world. And when they are not visiting or being visited, there is still always something happening in the Dream Girl's garden, something gay or sad or funny, for fairy children are really very like human children in their hearts, as perhaps you know. The Dream Girl has told me some of these happenings, and I have written them in this book for you to read. There you go. And that's the end of the first chapter. And it's short chapters. After the last few books we've had, which are long chapters, I'm definitely going to be reading more than one chapter today. I'm delighted. Much as I like the stories that we've been having, I also enjoy having shorter chapters, so I can actually just sort of catch my breath, get on with the next thing. And also, oh yes, don't forget to have something to snack on. Don't forget to snack. No, I'm not planning on doing a mukbang stream at all, ever. I'm very self-conscious about the noise I make when I eat. Right, carrying on. Next chapter, which is called, and I'm not going to say the numbers because since they haven't got them written on, after today's reading, I'm probably going to get lost with the numbers, so I'll just read the titles, chapter titles. So this chapter is Dream Away. Though fairies do not die, they sometimes grow up and may even grow old. If neither of these dreadful things should happen, wonderful, I hope. Rain and thunder outside your window. Aranelle's saying that she's got rain and thunder outside her window. If you're somewhere warm and dry, that's good. If it's threatening your computer and your power, not so good. So I hope that's all okay. It can be very soothing to have the sound there. If neither of these dreadful things... Sorry, I'm just trying to make context work here. I'll start that one again anyway. Oh, great, cozy in bed. Though fairies do not die, they sometimes grow up and may even grow old. If neither of these dreadful things should happen, they do not lose their lovely childish looks and graces and their sweet childish ways. But once their faith in those about them has been broken, they begin to grow up, and if that faith is not restored, they become really old. The fairies in the dream girl's garden were so merry that you might have thought they were all good and kind. No one's faith could ever be broken there, you would have thought. But Nim, that handsome Nim, N-I-M, had come into the garden with the others, and trouble followed him everywhere, for he had an unkind heart. It was through Nim that the gentlest one had grown up and gone away. And it was through him that pretty Dreamaway was now weeping bitter tears and was beginning to grow up too. Perlican saw it all and was sad, for Dreamaway was her dearest friend. All the spring and summer Nim had sought out Dreamaway and had made her his special playmate. He had played to her and sung to her and made her pretty speeches. He had smiled at her so charmingly that she loved him more than anyone, and he had frowned at all her playmates till he had driven them away. Then he had suddenly grown tired of the friendship. It was a way of his. And had quarrelled with Dreamaway and called her spiteful names, and he walked off as haughtily as if she were in the wrong, leaving her in tears. She hid herself in the deepest shade, and... Oh no, we've got pages missing. I don't know what happened next. That was page 14. We've got one page missing. 15 and one sheet page, 2 sides. Pages 15 and 16 I don't have. I'm just having a quick look to see if this is one of the ones that's available on... This is the easier way to do it. I'm going to give you the link for where I get my digital books from, which is Project Gutenberg, and I'm going to have a quick look there to see if there's a digital version of this one, because if there is, then I can still read the bit that's missing. I had no idea that that was missing. I know that most of her books are not available digitally, just because we're New Zealand, we don't really have a budget for this sort of thing. Sadly. No, there's only The Sun's Babies and Wonder Wings. Okay, we're just going to have to guess at what happened next. So she hid herself in the deepest shade and probably wept. And others would have been wondering where she was, blah, 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 and all that sort of stuff. So we're going to skip that whole page unless somebody else can find it somewhere else in a digital version that I can actually then see. So you can look for it if you want. The name's written up in the overlay up there, and just put a link in the chat. Otherwise I'll skip that bit. So the next bit is chapter 17, we've skipped 15 and 16, page 17, we've skipped 15 and 16. Oh, how can one be gay in such a heartless world? Dreamaway stirred in her dark corner underneath the leaves. So somebody else was miserable too, and had found out the badness of the world. No, I will not go to play with Dreamaway, he went on as if in answer to someone, for Dreamaway has treated me most cruelly. I thought her my friend, but she has turned out false. Oh my goodness, I'm thinking this is Nim being cruel. What do you think? Dreamaway sat up straight in her astonishment and horror, and listened so hard that she could scarcely breathe. She to be accused of the very thing that caused her tears. She was my playmate, he wailed, and I loved her and trusted her. But the handsome Nim... Oh, no, it's not, it's one of the others. But the handsome Nim came, and she forsook me and left me lonely all day. She crept from her hiding place and sat among the clematis flowers above him. "How can I have faith in anyone if little Dreamaway could not be true?" he sobbed. She flew down to him. "Oh, Flute, don't say it, don't say it," she cried. "I didn't know. I didn't think you cared." Nim said you didn't. He said he was the only one who loved me. "He is the only one who does not love you," Flute said, "and that is because his heart is bad." He drew her to the leaf beside him and laid a comforting arm about her pretty shoulders. "Dream away," he said. "Let us believe in one another and in all the world, and so be happy. There are not many Nims about, and when we meet them, we need not let them spoil our faith in other people, for that is misery. I believe the world is mostly kind beneath, but if we but trust it. So let us take heart and begin again." So he talked, wearing away the soreness of her heart, and presently she believed and smiled, and left off growing up. Then together they flew out into the sunny life of the flower-scented garden, to play and dance and sing as gaily as the rest, and Pelican went laughing all the day for joy that Dreamaway was saved. So I'm wondering if Pelican had actually gone and spoken to Flute and suggested something to make that change. Just going to have a quick look at the pictures that I have here. No, there weren't any others that were specific to what we're reading. Right. Just because the reason I'm saying this is because sometimes old books, they will have lovely illustrations in them. They will put them in the text, in between the leaves of the text, but it's not necessarily where they come in the story. And so I was just checking. Anyway, we'll see. Right. Sweethearts, which is the next chapter. There were only 2 Japanese fairies in the garden. They spent most of their time in the south corner among the beautiful Japanese irises and lilies. And I'm going to interrupt myself here. My grandmother used to have some irises that we were always told were Japanese irises. They had beautiful long straight stems, very slender straight stems, and long straight leaves that were only about that wide but quite long, that were not all floppy ones. And then they had this gorgeous dark purpley blue. It wasn't completely purple, but it wasn't completely blue flowers, and they were quite gorgeous, quite stunning, but not the over floppy ones like some irises are, but also not those pale blue, almost hard folded ones that we call Dutch irises. So we were always told that they were Japanese irises, and they grew next to the pond, which is down in the reserve next to us, which used to be part of my grandmother's land. But somebody, unfortunately, one of the council guys, when he was mowing the lawn, when it used to be lawn mowable around there, mowed right over the top of them, and it happened more than once because they would only come up in part of the year, and if you cut off the leaves all the time, they die off, and so we haven't got them anymore. And I really want to get some and plant them by the pond, and if I do, and if they flower, I will take photos and put them online so you'll know what I'm talking about. But yeah, I was really disappointed, and I hadn't realized initially that it had happened. I had been about to go down and put some sticks around it with string to rope it off so that the mowing guy knew, and then I ended up being away the day that the mowing guy came, and it was too late. It was just too late. So yes, I will. When I eventually get them, I will put them up. I don't know if you've noticed, but I do like blues and purples. And it'd be lovely to have them down by the pond there. They grew on the edge of the pond, so not right in it where they were completely wet, but somewhere where they still got access to more water than otherwise if they were away from the pond. Stunning, absolutely stunning. So I can understand these 2 Japanese fairies living in amongst the Japanese irises. Totally understand that. And lilies, I don't know what the lilies would have been like. I don't have stories about lilies except for the New Zealand ones. Well, they're not native, but you know. They were busy, happy little people, rather shy among the other fairies because they were new to the country and not yet sure of the language. Yu Kan played delightfully upon the flute. He would play the home airs of Japan to O Fei, till she could almost see the cherry blossom and the lanterns and the fireflies of her native land, and he had such a good ear that after hearing the song of a bird only once, he could play it correctly, note for note. He loved the birds and was always listening for new songs. He came beaming to O Fei one glorious spring morning, and obviously the names that she has used sounded to her kind of Japanese at the time, but I wouldn't expect them to actually be specifically Japanese names. The era of the writing. One spring morning when the sun was opening the iris buds and splashing them with gold, there was a new bird sitting on the tree of hanging branches, he said, and he sang such notes as these. He took out his flute from the wide sleeve where he often carried it and played a beautiful bird song, high and sweet. To his astonishment, O Fei did not smile and look charmed as she usually did. Instead, she sat with a downcast face and would not meet his eyes. Strange, thought Yu Kan. He played the new song through again. He played old bird songs, favourites of hers, the calls of mate to mate through the freshness of the morning, the drowsy twitterings of summer noons, the silver-clear good nights as evening shadows darkened underneath the trees. But still O Fei sat there with her downcast look and would not smile nor meet his eyes. "O breath of almond blossom," he asked at last, "what hangs so heavy upon your heart?" But she gave him only one quick, doubtful look, then flew away. For days she acted strangely, fleeing from her little friend whenever he came near, yet gazing on him from a distance with a puzzled, wondering look that was half sad and half afraid. It worried Yu Kan, and he tried hard to make her talk and explain what had come between them. But talk she either would not or could not, and at last he grew angry. "Play forever by yourself then, O stupid one," he cried, and turned to leave her, where she stood among the lilies at a little distance. That was too much for O Fei to bear. She flew to overtake him. "Stay," she begged, "stay, Yu Kan, and I will try to tell you what hurts my heart and comes between us, spoiling all our days." "Yea, please do." "Yes." He drew her to a seat beside him on a bamboo leaf. "Tell me," he said. She spoke slowly as though explaining was not easy. "It was the handsome Nim," she said. "He came and talked, O friend of the flute, while you were in the treetops listening to the birds. He said, 'You two are sweethearts.' And though I knew not the meaning of the strange word, yet there was such scorn in his voice that I felt it must be something evil. He laughed a laugh that has sounded in my ears ever since and has made me most unhappy. Yu Kan, what is the meaning of that strange word, sweethearts, and what evil are we two doing that we should deserve the scorn of other fairies?" "No evil at all," shouted Yu Kan in a rage. "No evil at all are we doing. How dare the Nim one say it?" His face fell and he held his head in his hands, pondering. "I know not the meaning of the new word," he said at last, "but we can ask the fairies in the garden." "No, no," she cried. "I could not bear their faces when the word should be said before them. Ask them not, Yu Kan." "O timid one," he smiled, "and yet wise too, for an evil word concerning us should not be put before the minds of others. Truly wise. Then the handsome Nim himself shall tell the meaning of his words. I will find him out and force him to explain." He sought out Nim and faced him, and though he spoke politely, his eyes were bright and fierce. "O handsome one," he said, "what is the meaning of your strange new word, sweethearts? I beg you to explain." Nim looked sharply up, then he laughed a sneering laugh. "You will find my meaning in the chestnut trees," he said, and off he flew. His voice and his face and his laugh were all so filled with jeering scorn that even bold Yu Kan felt sore and hurt and guilty without understanding why. He now knew why Ophe had shrunk from him and had been afraid. He flew among the fairies in the chestnut trees. They played and hid and found each other and sometimes kissed for love and happiness, and he found nothing there that was not beautiful. No trace of evil could he see. Returning to Ophe, he told her this. The fairies sit among the chestnut flowers, he said, but nothing evil is amongst them. Their ways are kind and pretty. I cannot see how they deserve the Nim one's scorn. Forget the word, little blossom of delight, and let us be happy as we were before Nim came. She promised, but neither of them could forget the word. Though they'd both tried hard to put it out of their minds, it was always there, coming between them like a thought of evil, spoiling all their play. They could not be their merry selves, happy as they were before Nim came. I will not ask the fairies among whom we live, but yet I must find out the meaning of that word, said Yukan at last. I go to roam about the world until I can discover someone wise and kind who will explain. He set out at once. He visited the white gnomes and the woodlings, the fairies of the hill and the fairies of the glen, the golden dwarves and the mushroom elves, but so sore was he over the word that not once did he dare speak about it, till he came to that lovely garden where it was always spring. Here dwelt the gentlest one, and as soon as he saw her face among the flowers, he knew that he could tell her all. He entered in and told her, and when she had explained, he sped home with a beaming face, singing aloud in his joy as he went. When she heard that singing, Ophe rose up to meet him, a new hope in her heart. Be glad again, O jewel of the earth, he said. The gentlest one has told me all. She says that Nim is cruel, seeking only to make mischief where he goes. She says that we need to take no heed of what he says, nor the way that he says it. And she says that the word sweethearts means that the heart of each makes life sweet for the other. It is a dear meaning, blossom of delight. It is indeed a dear meaning, said Ophe, and again they were as happy as before Nim came. That's lovely. I hope that this chap gets sorted out. Maybe that's what the book's about. Don't forget your drinks. Water and whatever else you feel like. And whatever else you're allowed at this time of day, wherever you are. Right. We have lovely fresh rainwater. It's nice, delicious. Flute. Next chapter. Flute. All fairies have beautiful voices, and their songs are so exquisite that if you once hear them, no other singing ever quite satisfies you again. But if you heard Flute, oh, nothing was ever so lovely as his golden notes, for he was the most wonderful singer that even the fairies had listened to. Bird songs and love were in his voice, and tears and laughter and sweet, wild dreams. The fairies in the garden would hush their own songs when Flute began to sing, and their hearts would beat high with happiness and the beauty of the world, for he sang of flowers and the wide sky and the wind in the trees and the merry sunshine. Often, when the moon shone gloriously and all the garden dripped with dew and moonbeams, and little scented sighs rose up from the mignonette and rose, he too would sigh, and he would wander about as if he knew not what he sought. Then, sitting on a bough, he would pour forth lovely wailing notes that seemed to have no meaning, yet were so full of longing and delicious sadness that every fairy wept to hear him, and strangely felt the happier for weeping. "Oh, Flute, Flute," they would sigh, "how you touch our hearts," and they loved him for it. But one day when the fairies went for a picnic into the hills, the golden dwarfs heard him sing, and from that moment they wanted him to live with them. How delightful it would be to have such a singer here, they said to one another. How pleasant to have him singing to us while we work. They begged the fairies to leave Flute with them, but the fairies were horrified at the idea. "Would you shut such a voice below the ground?" they asked. And Flute cried, "Leave the flowers and the wide sky and the wind in the trees and the merry sunshine? Never, never!" But a few days later a golden dwarf came by a secret way to the garden and found Flute lying alone among the daisies on the lawn. "I bring a message," he said. "If you will live with us and sing to us, we will give you a ball of gold every day." A ball of gold? Flute sat up. He loved the shine and glitter of the balls that the dwarves made from the gold in the mountains. At the picnic they had shown him a cave half filled with them, and had let him feel one and hold it in his hands. It was heavy, but it was very round and smooth and beautiful and precious. A ball every day. "May I keep them?" he asked. "Certainly," replied the dwarf. "Oh dear." "And play with them whenever I like?" "And play with them whenever you like," said the dwarf. Flute could not resist this. "Oh no! Oh dear, oh dear. Oh my, yeah, suspicious. That's about the sum of it. Definitely suspicious." Oh no. I'm just going to have a quick look to see if I can find the book on archive. The Internet Archive, because there are books that they have there which are not ones that you can keep, but you can borrow them as library books. No, not the fairy rings. That's the other one. Just because it is bothering me that I don't know what the rest of that chapter was. Right. Very suspicious. Right. I'm just typing into the search box on the Internet Archive to see if I can find it. Nope, they don't have it. Okay, right, we'll just do without it. That's okay. I just need to let it go. Let it go, girl. Just let it go. It's all right. We'll carry on reading. Yeah, there are some physical copies available, but usually they're archival copies, not archive copies. So what they are is they're in special collections in certain libraries. We have the Alexander Turnbull Library, which holds, it's at the National Library of New Zealand's headquarters down in Wellington. There is a section there which is basically historic books that are specific to New Zealand or precious for some reason or other, and they are held as a resource for the people of New Zealand to be able to access. Now, they're not digitised, so if you want to go and see them, you have to go to the library and specially request them. Auckland Library System, which is the region that I live in, has a similar thing, but it's a smaller collection, although it's actually pretty impressive for the age of New Zealand. So the collection was started by a chap who had been a governor of New Zealand when it was just a territory of England, basically, Sir George Grey, and he had donated books that he had. He had a medieval manuscript collection and a whole lot of other books, including some ones that he had written, one of which was Maori myths and legends. He had actually spent quite a lot of time gathering up the stories, the early stories that the Maori people were still telling to do with their own background, and he had written them down. He was very interested in that sort of thing. There were some things he did that were not good things, but there were some things he was made to do which he really didn't want to, but basically because his bosses, the government over in England, said, you have to do this, he kind of had to do it. But there were some really good things he did. Anyway, so his library was donated to what became Auckland Council, and that is the core of the George Grey collection, or the Grey collection. And I can, if I wish to, go down to Auckland Central Library and go to the special collections department and make a request to actually physically see these books. I would need to say specifically which ones I wanted, but I do know that a couple of the books that I want to read are actually there at the Auckland Library. So I could see them, but I couldn't borrow them and bring them home so I can read them, because they are, like this one, rather old and tatty. Some of them are rather older and possibly more tatty than this one, rough and falling apart, if you're not familiar with the word. So I have got that in my back pocket as a possibility, but I need to find out from the librarians if it's something where I can actually go and take photographs of the books, the pages within the books. If I can, then effectively it'll be my own digitization of some of these books, because they don't have the budget at the moment for being able to digitize stuff which does not have a wide usage. The priority is to digitize things that are going to have wide usage first, and then narrow it down to the ones that are going to be used less and less and less. So it's just one of those sad things, and it's not something I can really volunteer to do for them either. But when I have a little bit more space in my head and in my day, I will be making contact with the library to ask if I can actually do that, to go down and take just mobile phone photos. So it doesn't need to have a really powerful flash, so therefore it's not going to cause as much damage to the actual books, because flash from a camera can eventually build up to cause, it's like overexposure to x-rays. It can actually start to cause damage to historical documents and speed up their breakdown. So hopefully, yeah, so Q, that is one of the reasons why you will have found it in a New Zealand library that has a physical copy. But these are not books that have been reprinted as much as ones, say, the, I'm trying to think of other books, the Anne of Green Gables type books, kind of a similar era, but those ones have been reprinted so many times because the population that were reading them is so much bigger, and therefore there is a lot more oomph to the requests for further editions. One of the other places that has some of them is in Australia. Apparently they thought that they were also of historic importance to keep within their system. Yeah, it's the more you know. Yeah. So eventually, hopefully I'll be able to, but it's just going to take a little while. We'll get there. Where do we get to in the book? And could I play with them whenever I like? And play with them whenever you like, said the dwarf. Flute could not resist this. I will come, he said, and he followed the dwarf to the caves. There the dwarves welcomed him and made much of him. Never leave us, they said. Sing for us always, and you shall have the finest gold we can find. So he sang for them while they worked, and at the end of each day they gave him a splendid ball of gold, glittering in the light of the lamps they carried in their little yellow caps. They gave him also a steel box in which to keep his golden balls, and day by day his store grew greater. He loved to lift the lid of the box and play with the bright shining balls. Forget the garden and sing only of our life here, said the dwarves. We are not interested in those things. And Flute gave up singing of the flowers and the wide sky and the wind and the trees and the merry sunshine, and made songs instead about the dwarves with their picks and tools and lamplit caves and winding ways and the glittering of the gold. And he grew contented with his life and did not notice that his voice became daily less beautiful than it had been above the earth. But up in the garden there was sorrow. Flute was lost. Flute, the sweet singer who had filled their garden with delight, and the fairies were in despair because he was lost. They hunted for him everywhere in the garden, through the wood, over the fields and hills, far across the land to the edge of the sea. Flute, 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 they called. Where are you? Oh, come back to us. But no Flute answered, and no trace of him could they find. They returned to their home. The moon shone gloriously, the garden dripped with dew and moonbeams, and little scented, trying to turn the page in time but not making it, and little scented sighs came up. This is why they won't issue those books. Little scented sighs came up from Mignonette and Rose, but alas, no Flute was there to sing and touch their hearts. "Oh, Flute, Flute, Flute," sobbed Dream Away. And all the fairies sat about and wept. Suddenly, Dream Away sat up and dried her tears. "What sillies we are," she cried. "Of course he has gone to the Golden Dwarfs. Don't you remember they wanted him?" "But he refused to go," said Perlekin. Yet they have tempted him. I am sure of it," Dream Away persisted. "I know there is a secret way to their caves. I shall go and find him. I shall tell him how we miss him, and then he will come back." She set off at once, and the fairies dried their tears and watched her hopefully till she was out of sight. She flew over the land and into the hills till she came to a hollow tree on which there hung a mass of creepers. She alighted on the creepers and called, "Little thrush, I need your help." The thrush stirred on his bough. "Who calls?" he asked sleepily. "Dream Away calls, Dream Away, who saved you from the owl. I need your help now." The thrush came out into the moonlight. "Gladly will I help you, dear fairy," he said. "What is it I can do for you? Show me the door to the secret passage that leads to the caves of the Golden Dwarfs." "With pleasure. Follow me," said the thrush. He flew to the foot of the hollow tree and scraped away a bundle of twigs and dead wood that lay there. An opening appeared through which a faint light shone. Looking into it, Dream Away saw that this was the passage that led directly into the great cave where the dwarves lived, for she could see them seated around the table at their supper. "I wonder where Flute is," she thought. That noise you can hear is me turning the page, which you don't get when I'm reading from an ebook. She flew along the passage and stood within its shadow at the further end, peeping into the cave. Flute was not at the table. He lay fast asleep on a bed of moss behind a big steel box. She crept in and hid herself at his head. "Flute," she whispered, "Flute, wake up." The dwarves were talking loudly at their supper, 6 at a time, and they neither saw nor heard her. Flute woke and stared at her. "Why, it's Dream Away," he said. "How did you find me out? The dwarves will be angry if they find you here. They don't want me to leave them." "They have not seen me," she replied. "I came by the secret passage. Oh, Flute, come back to us. We miss you dreadfully and have searched the land for you. No one can sing like you. When I came away, every fairy in the garden was crying for you, Flute." He opened the steel box and pointed to the shining balls within. "I should have to give these up," he said. "They are beautiful," said Dream Away, "but I would not live under the ground for 1,000,000 golden balls. Have you so soon forgotten the flowers and the wide sky and the wind and the trees and the merry sunshine?" Flute looked uneasy, but he said, "I sing about the Golden Dwarfs now, and their picks and tools and lamplit caves and winding ways and the glittering of the gold, and I am content." And nothing that Dream Away could say would move him from that, though she talked for a long time of the dear old days and their happy times in the garden. At last, sad and disheartened, she left him. "He is in the caves," she reported to the fairies, "but the dwarves are giving him golden balls to stay, and he won't come back to us. I have said all I could say, and he still refuses." "But he will lose his golden notes down there under the earth," they cried. "Yes," replied Dream Away, "he must be losing them already, for even his speaking voice sounds less sweet than it was when he lived with us, and his songs now are only of underground things in the life of the dwarves." "Oh dear, whatever are we to do?" the fairies sighed dolefully. Dream Away sat with her head in her hands and thought, till at last she made a plan. Next day she gathered a handful of daisies from the lawn where Flute had loved to lie. She made a little magic over them. "Stay widely open," she said. Then she flew away to the caves, crept in through the secret passage, and laid the daisies on the golden balls within the steel box. When Flute returns through the winding ways with the dwarves this evening, he will find you here, she whispered, and the sight of you will make him long for the lawn and the garden. She hid in the cave to watch what should happen. Flute came back with the dwarves and lifted the lid of the box to place his golden ball with the others. When he saw the daisies, he took them eagerly in his hand. For a moment he held them tenderly and sighed a little, remembering the fresh green grass and the dear smell of damp earth with the wind and rain upon it. Suddenly he threw the daisies into a dark corner and began a loud song about the treasures of the caves. That plan has failed, said Dreamaway to herself, and again she went sadly back to the garden. Next day she caught a little wind from the trees and tied it in a silken bag and made magic over it. Sing when you come out, she said. She took the bag to the cave and hid it in the box and again waited to see what should happen. When Flute came home, he opened the bag to find out what was in it. Out came the little wind, singing and sighing and murmuring as if it was still in the trees. It wandered round and round the cave and at last fled, wailing through a winding way out to the upper world. Flute sat, listening with a look of longing in his eyes. Oh, the wind in the trees, he whispered to himself. Oh, the rush of wind and wings and the dancing of the leaves. For an instant his head drooped and tears filled his eyes. But next moment he seized his box and ran the glittering balls over his hands, and tears gave place to smiles. I am content, he said. I'm going to guess that the balls are kind of like, for him, the equivalent of marble-sized, if he was running them over his hands. That too has failed, said Dreamaway, yet I will try once more. She went to the thrush. Help me again, she begged, and the thrush willingly promised to follow out her plan and consented to be shut in the steel box. When Flute opened his box that night, a brown thrush flew out and perched on the lid, and there sang gloriously. He sang of pearly dawns when every bird awakes, and sings a carol to the returning day. He sang of long, glad mornings, and of golden afternoons, of scented, gentle evenings that slowly lengthened into starry nights. He sang of sunlight through green boughs, of dappled grass and waving flowers, and the gleam of red berries in the hedge. And suddenly Flute could bear the song no longer. Stop, stop, he cried. I cannot bear it. It brings back memories that I have tried to lose, and my heart is full of pain. The singing of the thrush had brought the dwarves about the box. Take no notice of the bird, they said. You shall have 2 golden balls a day. You shall have as many golden balls as you wish. Flute gazed at them sadly. The balls are beautiful, he said, but a buttercup among the grass is more beautiful still, and in the garden by the pond there are many buttercups. Come, little bird, I will go back to Dreamaway, back to the flowers and the wide sky and the wind and the trees and the merry sunshine. Why have I stayed away from them so long? Stay with us, begged the dwarves. He shook his head. I thought I could be content, he said, but I am not a dwarf, and the life below the ground is not for me. Fairies must live in the upper air if they would be really happy. Come, little bird. He flew swiftly out through the passage with the thrush, leaving the box and the balls without one backward glance. Dreamaway followed silently behind, and all the fairies rushed from the garden to meet him. Oh, Flute! Flute, how glad we are to see you here again, they cried. He smiled joyfully at them and took Dreamaway's hand as she came up beside him. I am so happy to be here that no golden balls could ever again tempt me below the earth, he said, and soon there were again bird songs and love in his voice, and tears and laughter and sweet, wild dreams. Now, I'm going to probably, I'm just seeing how many pages it is. Yep, I'm going to stop there because I've talked so long today. I'm sorry. Anyway, so yeah, I haven't actually engaged with the Witcher series yet. There are a lot of story concepts that are common in lots of different places. Certain aspects of a story where you think, I'm sure I've had this before, and it will be because it is reflecting something that is either culturally common or mythically common, in common, something that we share. A way that we can we have things that we have as shared experiences. That's one of the things that in the old days, spoken stories were that we had shared stories. Some of them were myths and legends, and we knew they were myths and legends, made up ways of explaining things. Other ones were historic recitations, recounting of different histories. And then we got to the written stage, and not so many people could read them. Sometimes they were written and read aloud. Sometimes they were just written and shared with others who were in the know. And then after a very long time, we've got to the stage of visual media. For other people who were back in the written era that didn't have the skills. Then you had things like paintings and tapestries and stained glass windows and sculptures and all that sort of stuff, where you had a visual representation of story. Yes, bards used to be the ebook readers of the day. Yeah, they were. That was a way of commonly sharing things that were part of history and part of background and things like that. And also sometimes bards would actually go from place to place sharing things that were effectively like news updates, but sometimes a song setting, an epic, a legend told to music, because sometimes it's recitation and sometimes it's song, usually with a musical accompaniment. So there's all these things, and so these days we actually have a lot more heavily rely on spoken and visual media, but through our digital sources, so TV programs where people have things that they have shared experience in common. Not so much these days as when I was a bit younger, where we had a much more limited range of what was available. Everybody had seen the Flintstones in the days before they had children, when it was just the adults. And then later on it was the Flintstones with the little baby ones like Pebbles and Bam Bam. And then you had the teenage Pebbles and Bam Bam in the stories. So sort of like different things in common. Scooby-Doo, things like that. But then you also had ones where it was not so much cartoons, it was actually acted. And radio broadcasts is another one too, exactly. Radio broadcasts used to be a big one. People used to sit around the radio and listen to stories. The War of the Worlds was one of those. And yes, we hear that there were people who panicked about it and thought it was really happening. Actually, no, that was a publicity comment that was made somewhere, that it was actually didn't really happen like that, but we like to think that it might have happened, where people panicked when they were hearing these news broadcasts, which were actually just a dramatization on the radio. But a way of people had these common things. In England, there was The Archers, which was a radio program, and it was a very, very long playing radio program. It was a certain time slot every day during the week, or in the weekend or whatever, but it had been running for years and years and years, and people grew up knowing these characters and the development of the different relationships and things like this. In New Zealand and Australia, there were a range of soap operas that did similar things. So in New Zealand we had Shortland Street. The English got it from us, and then in Australia there was Home and Away and Neighbours were the two different ones. All three of those programs launched the media careers of various people who are well known around the world. So I'm not sure which of the two Australian ones it was, but Chris Hemsworth, who plays Thor in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, he's Australian, and he grew up as an actor in one of those two Australian soap operas, basically. So you get a whole lot of things where it's a shared experience, even if we're not all actually there together physically sharing it. And so it's an aspect of why I like reading old books, is because it used to be a shared experience, because a lot of the books that I'm reading are books that were read aloud at one stage, you know, in a family setting. I've got a new book. I love it. I've really enjoyed it. Let me read it to you while you're doing your embroidery, while you're doing your crossword, while you're writing letters to grandma and things like this. Shared experience. If you didn't feel like sitting and listening to the radio, if it was late enough to be listening to the radio in that era. Yes, there's actually three brothers. There's one of them who's very little known, and basically is only in Australian productions. And then you've got Chris Hemsworth, and then you've got, there's another Hemsworth. Liam Hemsworth. I think it's Liam. Luke's the third one who you don't actually hear of. Anyway, so yeah, but we've got New Zealand actors who are overseas, and we only know of them now as being overseas actors. Well, we think of them, the world thinks of them as as actors overseas. We think of them as ours, but we're lending them to the world. So we have, amongst those, we have, oh, my mind's gone blank. Sam Neill, who was in the Jurassic Park sequence of movies. Sam Neill. He's been in a whole bunch of other things. He often plays as an Australian. He's actually a Kiwi. He's also been in a bunch of English things. He's also been, Taika Waititi's another one. Definitely Taika. The guy in the TV series called The Boys. He was in Dread. I can't remember his name. I will tell you, I really need to find the name, because otherwise this is going to bug me, which is why I'm now interrupting what I was doing to find the information for you. Carl Urban. He's another Kiwi, which people don't know necessarily that he's a Kiwi. He actually plays English in The Boys TV series. Very rough. Quite high age rating on it. Very rugged content-wise. Temuera Morrison. He's an earlier generation of New Zealand actor. I keep forgetting that there's some of them on The Expanse. My son watches The Expanse from time to time. He rewatches it. And yes, we do. There are New Zealand actors all around the world, and Australian ones. The English do that a little bit too. And I think what it is because we grow up hearing media from so many different countries through TV and movies, we're so used to hearing so many different accents that it's a little bit easier in some ways to pick up and start using an accent that is not our own, because we're already familiar with them. Our brains already process it. I was watching a YouTube video with a Scottish chap talking about his background. His family background. His father, I think, was Ghanaian from Africa, and his mother was Scottish, something like that. Typical white Scottish, as in white skin. And he's got dreadlocks, and he looks half African, because his genetic background, his racial background is so mixed. But he's talking, if you shut your eyes and listen to him, he is pure Scots. And I would say he's probably from Glasgow or somewhere near Glasgow. And it's quite funny. We get so used to, I was listening to him talking on this YouTube video, and I'm thinking like, yeah, good, that's interesting. Yep, that I follow that. Anyway, he gets to the very end of the video, and then he makes some comment about all these people who are probably having to use subtitles to understand what he's saying. And I thought, I didn't use subtitles. What's with that? And then I realised it's because when I was at school, we had one school teacher who was from Edinburgh, And then a bit later on, the church I went to had a minister who came from Edinburgh as well. The accent is technically it's different, the accent in Glasgow, but it's a lot more similar between Edinburgh and Glasgow than it is between, say, London or New Zealand or somewhere like that. But because of this, my ears and my brain were already tuned to the sounds that he was using when he was speaking, and I had no trouble understanding him at all, including some of the odd words he used because they are very Scottish words. And so because we come from a country with a smaller population, we don't produce all of our own media for our own consumption. We actually make stuff, yes we do, and we even export some of the stuff we make. We export a lot of our books. A lot of our books are available overseas. But because of this, to fill in the gaps in our media availability, we have media from Australia, from the States, from Canada, from England, as English-speaking countries that have their own market that they produce stuff. So we have soap operas from Australia. We have English ones. I mean, Coronation Street was on TV when I was a little kid. I think if it's still going as a TV program, it's probably still on TV in New Zealand. And later on there was EastEnders. So Coronation Street was up in the Midlands and EastEnders was down in London. EastEnders for a long time to me seemed still a very new program that was made to rival Coronation Street. If I think about it now, it's actually been around a very long time, just not as long as Coronation Street. But we grew up with all these different sounds, these different voices, the different ways of expressing themselves, because they weren't all received pronunciation for the countries that they were in. They were actually, a lot of those sort of things were actually made for local consumption in those countries, and so therefore they were people who spoke their version of English in their own local accented dialogue way. And so it was produced for them and it was successful. It was bought by other places and played in other places. And so we would actually hear these other accents, these other ways of speaking, these other ways of expressing ourselves that are so different to just what is in our own, in the air around us in our own places. Apex Legends. Yes, I have heard that she is epic. I have heard that she's a really cool character. I've got a friend down in another part of New Zealand who plays a lot of Apex Legends, and one of the reasons he plays Apex Legends is because he's disabled. Apex Legends is actually one of the games that's very good for being adaptable for different control systems. So he can play and does reasonably well. I mean, he does brilliant sniper shots. I can't believe how good he is, considering the physical restrictions he has, because literally his hands are this, with that, the top joint of his thumb on one hand. That's it. That's all he's got for controlling things. He cannot do this. The skin has grown over his hands because of the particular condition he's got. There's a whole lot of other issues to do with it as well. And so I have actually become familiar with some of these characters just from watching him play. I don't play those sort of games myself. I'm not even interested in playing them myself because I don't have the skills. I don't have the attention to detail. There's no way I have the reflexes for those sort of games. And yet the way he plays and the community he has built around him of other people who really are very supportive of one another. It's not just a disabled community. It's actually just a good broad community of people. But the thing is, I mean, he plays a lot of other games as well, but the game that he plays the most is Apex Legends. And part of it is the adaptability of the game system. And the second part of it is the diversity of the characters that you can choose to play. The women characters are not token gestures. They are strong characters in themselves. Flaws and skills, but also the characterization for different nationalities are really intriguing, including language use. Definitely not child friendly. No, I am not likely ever to play Apex. There's a lot of games where I get motion sickness. if for most control systems, unless it's a standard point and click adventure game, then I'm okay with those. If you ever want to look up that particular gamer, that particular player, let's see if I can find his link. Just a moment. I'm just going to give you his link. He's probably playing live at the moment, actually. I'll just see. Yes, he is. He's live at the moment. I don't tend to do raids or hosting other people, just because for me, I'm trying to keep the style of what's available here on my channel very, very family friendly, overboard family friendly, like so that the grannies can come and sit down and listen to a story with their grandkids and not feel like they've got to defend the ears of their little ones or anything like that. So I love watching games that are much more intense. I watch intense movies and TV programs and stuff like that with language and violence and all that sort of stuff. But even though I love the way he plays the game and the community he has around him, I'm not going to be hosting him or raiding him just because I don't feel it's appropriate for the type of audience that I am specifically trying to nurture. I love the fact that I have a bunch of gaming friends and reading friends who get involved here, and I want that to remain so, but I also want to encourage people who otherwise are scared of technology, are scared of going online, are scared of going to a website that hosts live things. I want to show them that not everything out there is going to eat them and destroy the lives of their young ones and that sort of stuff. And this is one way of doing that. And so that's why I tend to protect, guard, nurture the style of what I'm trying to do here. But yes, that's also why I'm happy to give you a link to go and watch No Hands. Like I say, he's playing live at the moment. In fact, one of my kids is in chat. He's actually one of the they're one of the mods over on the channel. If you go over there, say that I sent you. If once I'm finished, I'm very nearly finished. So if you go over to No Hands channel, say hi from me. I won't be joining in over there just because I've got to go and start doing things like dinner and stuff soon anyway. What was I telling you all about that? Yeah, accents and all that sort of stuff. So Q says, it's interesting, when I lived overseas at an international school in a non-English speaking country and now in Canada, it boggles me how people can't understand broken English or how to communicate in simple English and understand their accents. We had all sorts of accents teaching there who came in and out. Absolutely. I think the more that you hear and are exposed to other accents in a normal context, whether it's watching stuff or whether it's like teachers and people around you and stuff like that, the faster your brain gets at taking in the different sounds and saying, this is what they're saying, this is what it means, to the point where you don't actually have to think about what they're saying, you just understand it with no problem at all. It's just all that sort of stuff. Brains are very, very, very powerful computers if we give them the chance. If we don't actually give them the chance, well, it's like, oh dear. British International. British International School, is that what you're meaning? Q? Sorry. But yeah, I was already back to Apex Legends, I was already aware that there was an Australian in there. Yeah, we all know about the Australian with the language. But yeah, I was so excited when I heard about the Kiwi character being put into the next batch of releases for characters to play. Q, very jealous of kids who can learn multiple languages growing up. Yes, it's called British International School. Me too. I wanted to learn languages. I didn't learn languages when I was at school. The school wanted me to learn French because supposedly I was clever enough to learn French. My problem was that I was not clever, not kind of smart. I recognized that the way it was being taught was not something that would click with me. And the problem with that was that the teacher we had was not French, had not lived in France or a French-speaking country. It was a theoretical thing that she was teaching, and she'd not really had to put it into practice anywhere. So she may have been considered by English-only speakers as actually being very good at speaking French. But you're left a bit wondering, have you ever been to New Caledonia? Have you lived up there for a few weeks or a few months or whatever? How did you get on? Did you have to change the way that you spoke because the French that you were speaking had too strong an English accent, or were you mispronouncing things? All these questions in my head as a kid. And then on top of that, I didn't see how there was any possibility of me ever using French as a language, especially if I'd learnt it in New Zealand and France was over in the other side of the world, and I never thought I'd ever get there and live that way, somewhere like that. These days, I don't have the ability to remember things. So learning a language, the problem is not so much the sounds of a language, but the words for things and how to put them together. I find it so hard to remember things in English, let alone learning new words in another language. But if I understand a little bit about how sounds are meant to go together for letters in words that are written down, we used to joke about the fact my husband's family is Dutch. So he grew up hearing Dutch spoken and being able to speak a bit of Dutch with a little bit of a Kiwi accent, but speak a little bit, but couldn't read it because he learnt English when he was first started school and never any written Dutch. So he could speak it, but he couldn't read it. I knew what some of the letter combinations were meant to sound like. So when we were visiting friends and relations over in the Netherlands years later, and we had to find somewhere and we were reading signs or instructions about something, I would sound out what I could see written on the paper. He would listen to what I was sounding out and say, he would repeat it again, but as proper words in a sentence, and then say, oh, that means so-and-so. He couldn't read it. I couldn't speak it. But yet we managed to get by. Anyway, one of those quirky things, yet again, the brain being an incredible computer. Very similar. Canada forces French classes, and I ended up there past the basics, but they expected me to still attend, but I read books instead since it was all beyond me at that point. Yeah, it's a shame. I love it when kids get the opportunity to learn things that really catch their attention, that catch their heart and their interest, especially to do with the way they're taught. That can make a big difference too. Having to learn something just because you have to learn it is like, oh, do I really have to? It's just one of those things. Anyway, it's now after 5 o'clock here in New Zealand, and I really need to go and do some things. I'm looking forward to seeing you next time when I am going to read this very, very, very New Zealand book, The Seven Kites of Matariki, which is the one about, it's a modern book that's written for children. It's a picture book. See pictures, all sorts of lovely pictures in it, and it's written like a modern myth type of thing about Matariki. It may actually be based on some mythology about it. And I have loved having everybody here and being involved with the chat and the stream and talking together and comments about things. It's all been wonderful. Really, really enjoy having you all here. Thank you so much. And I'm just going to say, have a wonderful time between now and next time I see you. And thank you so much for being part of all of this. And I look forward to seeing you next time. Seriously, yes, I do. Look forward to seeing you next time. And in the meantime, don't forget, drink your water, eat your snacks, have somewhere comfy for when you're wanting to sit and chill and read. Doesn't have to just be me. So in the meantime, happy reading. Bye.